Hiya, Sami here, and welcome back to Chaos to Calm, the podcast for mums of young adults living with emotional dysregulation, BPD, EUPD, and all complex mental health issues. The messy, exhausting, heartbreaking, hopeful middle of it. Today I want to talk about something that's a bit close to home for us right now. I'm not going to go into detail because that's not my story to tell. But it means this topic is very much on my mind at the minute, and I know from our community that it will be on some of yours too, and that is EMDR. If your young person has just been offered it, or they've just started it, or it's been mentioned in an appointment, and you nodded along and frantically Googled it in the car when you came out, this episode is for you. I say that because I did that. So here's the thing. There's plenty of information out there about what EMDR does for the person having it. There is almost nothing about what it's like to be the mum on the other side of it all. The one making the tea afterwards, the one lying awake wondering if it's working, the one who wants to ask how did it go and doesn't know if she's allowed to, and also doesn't know whether she wants to. So let's do both. What it actually is and what it actually is like for us mums. So EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which is a mouthful, I know. So stay with me. It was developed in the late 1980s by a psychologist called Francine Shapiro, and it's now one of the most researched trauma therapies in the world. It's recommended by NICE here in the UK for post-traumatic stress, and it's recognised by the World Health Organization. So this isn't some fringe thing that your CAMS team or your therapist has plucked out of the air. It's real, proper, evidence-based treatment. The idea behind it is this. So when something overwhelming happens to us, the brain doesn't always file that memory away properly. Instead of being stored as a thing that happened in the past, it stays raw, it stays front, live, unprocessed. So when something in the present brushes up against it, maybe a smell, a tone of voice, a feeling, a visible, the brain reacts like it's happening right now. Now that is why our young people can go from 0 to 100 in seconds over something that looks from the outside like nothing. EMDR helps the brain finish the filing job. The therapist asks the person to briefly bring the difficult memory to mind while doing something called bilateral stimulation, usually following the therapist's fingers with their eyes, or sometimes tapping, or sounds that alternate left and right. And somehow, and the honest answer is scientists are still working on how or exactly why it works, that combination helps the brain, tongue-tied this morning, reprocess the memory. It doesn't erase it. They still remember what happened, but it loses that sting. It becomes a memory instead of a live wire in the brain. Here's what it isn't. It isn't hypnosis. They're awake, aware, and completely in control the whole time. It is not your child lying on a couch retelling every awful thing in detail. That's actually one of the reasons EMDR is offered to a lot of young people. They don't have to talk it all through, again, blow by blow. And as we know, they have to go through it lots of times. So for someone who can't find the words, who doesn't want to, that matters enormously. And it isn't instant. So I really want you to hear that one, because I think as mums we think secretly, this might be it, might be instant, might happen, everything might change. What actually happens and why it's slower than you expect. So EMDR has 8 phases. You don't need to memorise them, but you do need to know this. The memory processing bit, the bit with the eye movement, that you've seen on telly. It doesn't start on day one. The first phase is history taking and planning. Then there's the preparation phase, where the therapist teaches your young person coping mechanisms and skills, grounding techniques, and ways to feel safe and steady. So for our kids, where the trauma often isn't one single event, but layers and layers of painful experiences, that preparation phase can take weeks, sometimes months. And I know what happens in a mum's head, because it goes on in mine during that time. Why is nothing happening? We've waited all this time and they're just talking. They're doing breathing exercises. They're just chatting. That is preparation for the therapy. It's the foundation. So a good therapist won't open the trauma box until they know your child has the tools to close it again. Please don't measure progress by whether the real bit has started. It's all the real bit. Then comes the processing itself. Over however many sessions it takes, and afterwards there are phases where positive beliefs get strengthened. Moving from I'm not safe or I'm not good enough towards something kinder, and where progress gets checked and rechecked. So what to expect at home. This is the bit nobody told me. EMDR is hard work for the brain, genuinely, physically hard work. So after a session, don't be surprised if your young person is absolutely wiped out. Some people call it an EMDR hangover. And honestly, that's exactly what it looks like. Knackered, foggy, flat, really vivid dreams, really common flashbacks. The brain carries on processing overnight, a bit like an extended version of REM sleep. So sleep might be all over the place for a night or two. They might even be more raw than usual, more sensitive, quicker to snap or quicker to cry. And things can genuinely feel a bit worse before they feel better, because stuff is being stirred up on purpose and is traumatic for them. For most people, that settles within a day or 3. But if you don't know it's coming, it's terrifying. You watch your child come home from the thing that's supposed to help, and they seem worse, and every alarm bell you own starts ringing. It's not working. It's making them worse. Should we stop? Absolutely not. 9 times out of 10, that is the therapy doing exactly what it's meant to do. The therapist will have prepared them for it and given them tools for it. Our job is not to panic, or at least not to panic where they can see us. We are allowed to panic in the utility room. That's what it's for. Obviously, and I will always say this, if you're seriously worried about their safety, that's different. And you contact the therapist or your crisis support teams. Trust your gut on safety, always. However, rough days after sessions, completely expected, completely normal and part of it. Now the bit about us. Because this is Chaos to Calm, and you knew I was coming for your feelings eventually. When your child starts EMDR, something strange happens to you as well. There's hope, and hope is scary. We've learnt to be careful with hope, haven't we? We've had our hearts broken by waiting lists and discharge too soons, and she didn't engage. So when a real evidence-based therapy actually starts, part of you wants to throw a party, and part of you is braced for it to fall apart. Both of these are allowed and normal. There's the being on the outside of it. You will probably not be in the room. You will probably not be told what came up, and that is right and proper. It is their therapy, their memories, their pace. But knowing it's right doesn't stop it aching. You've been the keeper of this child's whole story. Every appointment, every crisis, every 3 a.m, and now the most important work is happening behind a door you don't get opened. That's a loss. And you're allowed to feel that. Then there's the guilt. Oh, the guilt. Because when your child is processing trauma, a voice in your head whispers, some of that trauma happened on my watch. Maybe some of it involves you or the family or things that you do differently. I want to say this really clearly. Your child healing is not evidence against you. Getting them to the point of sitting in that chair, through the waiting lists, through the referrals, the fights with the services, that was you. That is your part of the therapy. You did that. So what helps us? Practically, think low demand aftercare. Session days are not the days for. Have you thought about college applications? Have food they're liking, let them sleep, let them be quiet or let them talk. Follow their lead. Don't interrogate. How did it go? That can feel like real pressure when your brain's just run a marathon. Something softer works better. No need to talk, but I'm here if you want to. And then, hardest of all, actually leave it there. Be steady, not fixed. Progress in trauma therapy is not a straight line. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step sideways, 1 week where everything is worse. Then suddenly, a moment where they react to something old in a completely new way, and you have to leave the room so they don't see you cry. And look after your own nervous system. You cannot be the calm harbour for someone doing the hardest work of their life if you are running on empty and white-knuckling every session day. So whatever steadies you, walking, friend who gets it, your own therapy, our community, treat it as part of their treatment plan. Because honestly, it is. So let me just say this. EMDR is not magic and it's not instant. It's slow, tiring, wobbly work for them and in a quieter way for us, but it is real. It helps so many people. And if your young person is starting it, something genuinely hopeful is happening, even on the weeks it doesn't look like it. Your job isn't to make it work. Your job is to be the safe, boring, snack-providing constant in the background while their brain does the heavy lifting. Boring can be underrated. Boring is what safety feels like. So if this landed with you today, come and find us in the free Chaos to Calm community on Facebook. The link's in the show notes. There'll be other mums in there just like you whose kids are somewhere on this same road. And there is nothing like being understood without having to explain. So I shall leave you with this. If your child's brain is finally being given the chance to put the past where it belongs, what would it look like for you to give yourself the same permission? Take care of you. You're doing so much better than you think. I'm Sami, and this has been Chaos to Calm.